Hi folks, Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about this idea of affordable housing and how this housing can be structured, not only in terms of the buildings or the quality of buildings, but how these affordable housing areas and the sort of people that would inhabit that housing, how they should be either concentrated in areas or suburbs or districts, inner city, ghettos, that sort of thing, or whether or not they should be distributed around the suburbs. Now, there's been all sorts of propaganda going around that any in Australia as well as the US, or all across the Western world, in fact, that any suburb that's sort of 95% plus white is somehow a Nazi, a Nazi hellscape or something. Fascists everywhere. Hitler was seen actually going out the back door just a few minutes ago. And, that sort of stuff. And there are various hysterical reports in left-wing journals, but also even mainstream media outlets that in the latest census, suburb such and such had 99% white. Therefore, Nazi, that's it, end of discussion. They're all fucking Nazis. Whereas suburbs that are 90% black, the beauty of the multicultural, that just shows what a fantastic place that is. Now, the reality, of course, is quite different. The 99% white suburb has quiet tree-lined streets. Crime is about zip. There's not even a local police station in that suburb because the crime is so low. The thefts, the home break-ins, any measure of crime, and it's almost close to zero in those sort of neighbourhoods. But somehow they insist that it's some sort of fascist hellscape. I don't get it. Whereas, in the black suburb, they say is just a place of endless beauty, a social nirvana on steroids, where you're lucky to, people don't go out at night, they're so scared, that sort of thing. Then your car thefts, jackings, break-ins, assaults, rapes, crime of every imaginable type is committed there. Yet somehow the criminal hellscape is touted as being a beauteous thing, whereas the zero crime, clean, tidy suburb, because it's mostly white, is touted as some fascist state. Now, I don't know how many people have sort of gone from, I guess I was brought up in an upper middle class area, so I've had some experience, but it's been fairly brief of high crime areas where the social diversity really is in, when you interpret what a social diversity means, what it means is the social trust in the neighbourhoods is zero, and you go to a neighbourhood that's not socially diverse or racially diverse, and social trust is very high. And so I've seen those. I should mention one time I was driving in one of the earlier times. I was in Los Angeles, so I'd have been, I don't know, in my 20s and early mid 20s, I suppose. And I'm going along the Santa Ana Freeway, which goes from like the Orange County sort of area into more the downtown part of LA. And I think I had to go to El Segundo or something like that, but which is like towards the area where the LAX airport is. And so I'm going along the highway, and I had to do a turnoff. Now, the road system here is a little bit different in terms of the ramps on and off, and the freeways and the street. So a little bit different to how it is in Australia and Europe. So it's a little bit, it takes a bit of getting used to. I've got a hire car, so I'm driving on. And I was looking for a turn off, I can't remember what the number was now, the 1711 turn off. And there was another turn off off the freeway, which was the 171. So one digit out. And as I'm looking around trying to sort of read maps and and that sort of stuff. I took the wrong turn, so I went off the into what is East LA, probably one of the most a lot of Hispanics and blacks, and you come off because you can't see the street level things from the freeway because it's up off the ground. But so I get down to the street level. Whoa! That is another universe. And I was looking around. Holy fuck! I gotta get out of here. And the place looked like I don't know, like some sort of nuclear winter had been through. It looked absolutely terrible, and this was a place where the down at heel people lived. It was dirty. It was the nature strips were all overgrown. It looked like it sort of had that look, sort of like a ghost town, but somehow people just came out of the ground. It was strange, and I had to stop to because I was lost. I couldn't find the ramp back up to the freeway. I'd taken some wrong turns, and I was going, oh fuck, and so I had to stop at a Karl Barks, as they had them back then, and to try and make a phone call, just say to these people, because I was already running a bit late. I thought, well, I better let them know I was late. This was just before the mobile phones were installed in cars, or not long before anyway. And so I stopped, and these bunch of a bit like that Michael Douglas movie Falling Down. Sort of the call boxes are strange there. In Australia, you'll find the call box is actually in good condition, but the phone's damaged. And it was the opposite there, that the phone, the call box had been trashed to the point of where it barely existed, but the phone worked. That was kind of, I suppose, I don't know, maybe somehow it's they don't want the means of communication cut off from the people. I don't know. There's kind of some sort of street justice narrative in that, but I couldn't quite suss it. But anyway, I'm in there making a call, putting in my corridors, and these guys, these Hispanic guys, some of them look like half black Hispanic. I mean, so they jumped up from behind a wall on this like vacant lot, which was almost like a jungle. It was overgrown, other than a few sort of paths that were trekked through it, and they surrounded the phone booth. Now I'm there with a nice high cane, dressed in a suit, white honky boy. What the fuck am I doing in this area? This is an act of trespass. And so now I speak enough Spanish, or did speak passable Spanish back in the day. I mean, it's rusty through lack of practice, but so I was listening to. I could pick up enough of what they were saying, and there was plenty of estupido coños and all that sort of stuff, and so they were listening to me talking in the phone, and they were sort of looking, hey, he's not from around here, he's not a local boy. I mean, he's talking real weird, and they made the decision that because I wasn't a local boy, an American, that kind of the social struggle, it wasn't my fight, and it wasn't anything to do with me, and they would let it go, even the temptation of rolling me for the wallet or something. And I did consider what I was going to do. I was a pretty fit dude, back in the time, and I'd contemplated how I was going to get away from these guys and make it back to the car. But I thought, if they got blades or something. So anyway, they lost interest, and as quickly as they appeared out of the ground, they sort of melted into the neighborhood and were gone. But I remember my heart racing, thinking, holy shit, this may be the end. I hope they discover my body. So, but that sort of showed me what an area in the United States, at least, was like. Let's now come to the equity agenda that the globalists are pushing the Biden administration to do. Remember, this globalist agenda is to crush white people. It's not to help anyone else or further them, but further the cause of blacks or anyone. It's just to crush white people. White people, you have nowhere to go. Wherever you go, we will find you and crush you. That's really what this is about. So what the under the guise of equity, which is again code speak for crushing white people. Under the guise of equity, one of the senior people in the sort of equity for housing drive is like a black lesbian, and who's been at the forefront of the most radical leftist black activism in the United States, and a big push of like the critical race theory crap, and so really all the white districts around the United States in say city suburbs, that sort of thing, and even decent sized towns that are nearly all white, they're all getting the threat that you won't get any more funding from the federal government unless you have what they're calling an equity plan to put lots of black housing and low income housing in white areas. Now this is not going to be organic or anything. This is going to be forced. You damn well do it, or else not only will we call you Nazis, but we'll deprive you of legitimate funding if you don't do it. Now, I think this will get challenged in the Supreme Court, and I doubt it'll get very far. But again, those who oppose globalist policies and the Republican machine and those associated with it generally seem to be really, really terrible foot draggers when it comes to opposing the Democrats, the globalist controlled Democrats' moves here. Whereas in the reverse, if Trump tried anything, a million lawyers would descend on it, and activist judges would be getting hysterical. They'd be getting court stays within seconds and this sort of stuff. But on the other side, it's really slow. That they just seem to amble along ineffectually, and all these Biden things just don't get the pushback that they should. Now, again, so let's just talk about this placing low-income housing in the suburbs. I'm not actually opposed to that in general principle. It was tried here in Australia some years ago. I remember trying it out in Sydney, and there were these sort of concentrated ghettos, mostly white people back in the day, but where the people with mental health problems, career criminals, people with intergenerational welfare dependency, all this sort of stuff. There weren't many of them, but they tended to put them together in suburbs. Now, this seemed to just encourage the criminality. It's almost like they tried to outdo each other with how many crimes they could commit in a day and this sort of thing. So they then started to distribute them. They then thought, okay, well, that's not going to work. That seemed to be creating more crime. We're giving them free houses, we're giving them money, we're giving them this, that, and the next thing, but it's not helping. We're even got special school officers to members of people from the education department to make sure the kids get to school, and even if they've got to be driven to school in government buses or something like that, they'll somebody will actually go to the house and say, hey, Billy Bob's got to go to school, or Billy Jean's got to go to school, and they'll take them and then drive them to the school. So there's a lot of drug addiction, alcohol, and all sorts of stuff, the problems there. Now, they weren't as bad as the black ghettos that I saw in for example, East LA, and there was one in Philadelphia and another one in I think it was New York, but they were pretty bad by Australian standards. You go, whoa. Now, the government then thought, well, this isn't working, so what we'll do is we'll put low-income blocks of housing, like housing apartments, not the tower blocks, but the 40 apartments in the block, that sort of thing, and we'll distribute them around. So we'll have a couple of 40 apartment blocks over here, some miles over there. Now, that still didn't work because you've still got 80 sort of criminals and mentally defective, so still effectively next to each other. Now, that still creates a cultural microcosm where they will encourage each other to again engage in criminality or avoid any effort or attempt at self-improvement or any attempt at breaking out from that cycle of crime and poverty. So the government then went to the next stage, and this was a left-leaning government, and they said, okay, what we'll do is we'll just take a couple of apartments in an area, maybe in a block, but in an area, and we'll put people in there, put the criminal people in there. Now, what they found in the end is they had to have, no more than one sort of welfare criminal family in a block of apartments, and preferably a smaller block or even a house. They were giving a house, and they put it in the richest areas, wealthiest areas of Sydney. So there was, one here or a couple there, and so on. So they dispersed them quite widely. This is a test case. So you could have, say, in the richest suburb in Australia, you could have one of the poorest welfare-dependent families in that suburb, but they'd be surrounded by people who were behaving well, who were polite and thoughtful and caring, and lots of social trust in the area. The kids would go to a school where they were all the children of well-to-do parents, and again, with the huge behavioural, there just wasn't anyone around them who was engaging in criminal acts, or who wanted to, or was even thinking about it. So this had quite a positive effect. This actually did work, that the government found. But the concentration of people is, if you think that there's, say, for example, say there's 50,000 people or 10,000 families, for example, in the ghetto suburb, where again they're all encouraging each other and bouncing off each other to engage in criminality and zero social trust, that sort of thing. There's, even if you disperse some around every suburb, there's still only several hundred. You can do it to at any one time, and the osmosis is slow. It takes several years before it has a real lasting effect on the people who have moved to a better suburb, and you can't allow them to go back, or they'll slip right back into their previous habits. So because of that, and because the concentration has to be very light, you've got to have them at most 100 metres apart, or at least rather 100 metres apart. You just can't put that many people out there, and it's a very expensive way of doing it. You've got to effectively buy property in the wealthiest and better suburbs and areas of a city, and paying market price. The government buys them and pays market prices for it, and so you've got it takes years, and so you can't do it to many people. So when they look at the rate of people that are entering the ghetto type scenario, and the rate at which they can lightly sprinkle them all around the city in order to have the real effect, to really get results, then people are coming into those ghettos at a faster rate than they can go out. But if they increase the density of these criminals, so they're living next to each other, even if you've got two in the same block, it's still enough that they're like birds of a feather flocking. They just drawn to each other, and again encourage this criminality. So it is possible to change the behaviour and change the circumstances of people. If you're surrounded by people who are all polite and trustworthy and kind, and no one's thinking about a criminal act, and everyone's talking about positive things and what they're going to do with their lives, then eventually that will have an effect. Unless there's a unless you've got a moronic low IQ sort of situation, and that maybe is going to be. But if you've got no one around you that's talking about being criminal or acting like it, or behaving with that odd paranoia that those sort of people behave, how they behave, then you can change that behavior. So anyway, it takes a long time. So it works, but not on the scale that's necessary. How else can it be done? I don't know. Once you start putting those sort of people who've never known social trust, they've never known a non-criminal, they've never known an existence outside of welfare dependence, then some of them will, even if you have like a few in a block of apartments or something, some of them will make the change. But again, it's a very slow, difficult process. So this idea of dispersing housing around, low-income housing, which is, if you look at the black activist, even the black activist who's heading up the Department of Housing in the United States, Federal Department of Housing, there's no doubt about that. That lady is a radical activist. Now, the solution to the black ghettos is to put low-income black housing, and shooting up rooms and all these sorts of things in the white suburbs. if it's a majority white area, then it's targeted for this sort of things. Now, I can't see, why aren't they targeting Muslim areas, for example, saying, well, gee, there's 75% Muslims living in that area. I don't know. Let's force them to have, a nice, some high-rise apartment blocks of black criminals from downtown Baltimore or something. Why aren't they doing that? They're specifically targeting white areas, as best I can tell, at least. And again, it's not for the benefit of the black. If they really wanted to help the black community, there's a lot of things they could do, and moving low IQ, drug dependent, intergenerational welfare dependent criminals from one place to another changes nothing, and all it does is punish the white people, the straight white people that these globalists so hate, and forces you to give up on life. Just give up on the system. There's nothing worth fighting for. So who cares if the globalists take over? There's nothing worth fighting for anymore. They've taken it all away. That's the outcome that they want. And if they succeed in doing this, there's no pushback. I think they'll get it. It'll certainly contribute to the white middle class just rolling over and accepting global dominance. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.